75 minutes, we're going to spend some time really going deep into what really made us embark on this research study, as well as, of course, what are the highlights of the report. And we have a very interesting line of people who are going to give us perspectives and inputs on this topic. As we get started, a quick introduction to myself and the organization. I guess a lot of you are from the ILSS network in itself. My name is Archana, and I'm currently the COO at ILSS. And at ILSS, our primary objective is to build leadership capacity for the social sector. Very often, we've seen that the social sector has incredible organizations doing some really, really rich work. And the importance of leadership is what we focus on. And we do this primarily through two different ways. One is infusing talent. We say that it's never too late to join the social sector. And so, how do we work with people across sectors who want to be part of the social sector and the nation building through that journey? And the second is, how do we work with leaders who are already in the social sector to be able to accelerate their impact, both their leadership impact as well as their organization's impact? So that's really what we do. Spend all of our waking hours thinking about talent and leadership for the social sector. And so the chances are you know us through one or more of the programs that we've done in the last 6 years. So since the time we started, we've worked in 6 different areas where the programs are the base of the work. We started with, of course, the ILS's flagship leadership program, and then there's also the board leadership program, which are both for people who want to be more involved in the social sector. And our other programs are picking up specific areas that are of focus for talent in the social sector. So we started with fundraising, no prizes there for guessing why it was the first, and then looked at people practices. And then we have the Emerging Women Leadership Program. And last but not the least, before, of course, the digital journey started for us, we had the board governance program. So very, very privileged to today have over 800 leaders who we work with as part of this community, and over 350 organizations who are committing to building leadership in the social sector. So that's a little bit of the context in which this study and this research was really undertaken. Because as we looked at what are the other big opportunities and pain points for the sector, of course, digital was one of the things that came up as a huge, not just opportunity, but also a pain point. The difference between someone not at all thinking much about digital to how when someone has really put some thought and some resources on it, what they're able to do, the difference was really, really stark. And so that's what got us on this study, of course, along with Koita Foundation. I'm going to actually request my colleague, Ruhi, who led the research and must have spoken to several of you who are joining us today, to just provide us an overview of the insights that we had from the report, and then we'll move from there. Ruhi.
Hi, thank you, Archana. 1 second. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Hi, I am Ruhi Sharma. I am the Associate Director of Programs at ILSS. Over the last 7 months, we conducted a comprehensive research study to understand the needs, barriers, opportunities that exist in the sector when it comes to digital transformation. We had support from Koita Foundation to carry out this study. We interviewed leaders from 40 nonprofit organizations, and we also talked to 15 plus industry and domain experts to discuss and talk about some of the findings that we were getting as part of these conversations. Between our nonprofit leaders and the experts, we had 56 survey questions that we asked these folks. And in addition to that, there was extensive secondary research and analysis that we'd conducted. We will look into some of the demographic data points that we had from the participants. 60% of our participants, participating organizations were in operation for over 10 years. And then 12.5% were in the range of 3 to 5 years. A quarter of our organizations were in operation for 5 to 10 years, and a small cohort of 5% of organizations were between 1 and 3 years of operation. When it comes to team size, 35% of the cohort had a team size of under 24 folks, and a quarter of them were between 25 and 100 member teams. 17.5% were between 100 and 200 members, and 22.5% had over 200 members in their organizations. Moving on to annual operating budgets, we saw that over 50% organizations were under 10 crores of budgets, but it was we still had representations in all the segments that we were checking out. So we had 7% that were above 50 crores as well. 3% did not participate in revealing their annual operating budgets. Moving on. So we have several key findings that we saw as part of the study. The top 3 participating sectors that participated in the study had representations from education, livelihoods, and health. Organizations were pursuing multiple digital transformation goals, and 73% of them wanted to improve program outcomes. 70% wanted to work on scaling their operations. 2/3 of the participants have a tech team, an IT or data team in their organization, but we also saw that a majority of them had pretty lean teams when it comes to tech, data, and IT. And then 90% nonprofit organization believe additional tech solutions will benefit their overall goals in the organization. Nonprofits are using technology today for 90% of them said for programs, 70% said they are using it for project management. 87.5% nonprofit organizations are serving rural areas, wanting to use digital transformation to reach their last mile user in India. So we have seen that we see that there are strides being made, but it's still not as transformative yet. So there is need for us to align digital transformation with the core impact and organization objectives. We still need to have a balance between build and buy dichotomy that we were seeing coming up in the organizations, and figure out if organizations need off-the-shelf products or custom-made products. There is a lack of skilled technical talent that is needed to drive and sustain digital transformation. And finally, leadership buy-in, and leadership is needed to enable digital transformation in the organization and ensure adaptability and sustainability in the organizations. And 88% of our survey participants suggested that they need a comprehensive capacity building program and ongoing mentor support as going on forward. So with that, we want to unveil our report, the final report, the State of the Sector report on digital transformation for nonprofits in India. I encourage folks who are present today to scan the QR code present, and you will be directed to the website to download this report, and you can go through it and read it. Yeah. I think we'll keep this on for the next couple of seconds and then move on to the next segment. Okay. I think I'll bring on Arjuna now.
Thanks, Ruhi, not just for sharing those insights, but also for doing a very thorough job of talking to different people in the sector to be able to really pull together and say, what's the current state of digital transformation in the social sector? I completely echo, as someone who had the privilege of being in several of those conversations, that we've made so much progress, right? At least in the last decade or so, there's been so much progress, not just in urban, but also in rural, not just in the big social sector orgs and the smaller ones as well. And so today, over the next hour, we're going to almost give you a preview of the context of this report and where we are headed from there as ILSs, as you, of course, engage much more in detail with the report at your own convenience. Very delighted to have an incredible set of people who are not just here with us on this special evening, but have also really been working with us at the back end on this study that we have embarked on. So Rekha Koita, Rizwan Koita, Shankar Maruwada, all of you, thank you so much for being with us today. These people, perhaps these leaders really don't need a formal introduction. However, for the benefit of some people who may be joining us from a wider ecosystem, I'm going to quickly introduce our guests today and move into the conversations. I'll start with Rizwan. So Rizwan and Rekha actually have been co-partners with us in this project and really looking at what is digital transformation, right? So very grateful to have you with us on this journey. Rizwan Koita is an entrepreneur and philanthropist today with a passion to leverage emerging technologies and business process innovation for meaningful social impact. The director and co-founder at Koita Foundation. He's also the chairperson for the National Accreditation Board for Hospitals and Healthcare Providers, NABH. He founded Citius Tech, a global healthcare technology company, and of course is now also actively associated with the philanthropic venture Koita Foundation, which focuses on digital health in India. Koita Foundation, it was interesting as we did this study that there were so many organizations that had overlap with Koita Foundation somewhere, given the work that you all have done in the sector. Koita Foundation partners with leading academic institutions, hospitals, and industry associations to drive digital health adoption in India. Mr. Koita is, of course, also a recipient of the prestigious IIT Bombay's Distinguished Alumni Award in 2019 and the Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year Award in 2013. Thank you, Rizwan, for joining us today. I'll also go ahead and quickly introduce Rekha and Shankar. Rekha's been our thought partner, our collaborator on this project ever since we started. Very grateful for the active involvement, the conscience keeping to say, what does the sector really need? As the director and co-founder of the Koita Foundation, Rekha has a tremendous set of experience, not just in consulting at Accenture, not just what the Koita Foundation does, but also in corporate training background. And so that's something that it's been super instrumental for us on this journey. Rekha spearheads the NGO transformation efforts. The foundation works with NGOs to optimize processes and implement technology to enhance program scale and outcomes. She holds a master's degree in material science and engineering from the Carnegie Mellon University and a BTech from IIT Bombay. She was also honored with the IIT Bombay's Distinguished Services Award in 2019. You'll see me smiling because as I'm putting that, it reminded me of how, as we did the study and we were talking to several people about the role of mentors, and about at least half a dozen people told us, if you get us a mentor like Rekha, get us. Otherwise, don't get us a mentor. And so that's the role that she's brought to this project, not just as the Koita Foundation person, but really being able to think about capacity building. Thank you, Rekha, for joining us today. And of course, Shankar is formerly the CEO and co-founder of EkStep Foundation. He's also on our board at ILSS. And so we're very privileged. So he's giving us the conscience keeper, the technology, our in-house technology guide for us at ILSS. Thank you so much, Shankar, for joining us. Of course, besides being a board member, he's also a faculty at our program. And I can tell you that for all the people who sit through your space, they're like, oh yeah, what does it really take to create change at scale? What he's super passionate about is addressing societal and social problems at scale through technology based tools. An entrepreneur and a marketing professional with a wide range of experience, he's worked on projects as large scale as Aadhaar, India's national identification program, where he was the head of demand generation and marketing. Shankar pioneered data analytics in India through Marketix, a company he co founded. Also, an investor in startups, a mentor to entrepreneurs. He's an alumnus of IIM Ahmedabad and the IIT Kharagpur. Thank you so much, Shankar, for joining us. I'm actually going to begin by inviting Rizwan to perhaps just share some remarks on, as we've started this wide, ambitious journey on right from the needs to the report and then the way forward. Would love to just bring you in, Rizwan, to share some remarks on this special evening for all of us.
Sure, sure. So first of all, thank you very much, Archana, and I must compliment the entire ILSS team, Anu, and all you guys for doing an absolutely fabulous job of taking what was essentially a very quick conversation several months back and converting that into a full-fledged, almost an industry level study, which will then provide us with a very strong, a footing in terms of information that we need to be able to construct a really good program. I know we have a lot of leaders from the social sector, so I'll perhaps take a couple of minutes and just talk about my excitement about what we are trying to do. If you look globally, there is no question that technology has been one of the biggest drivers of both scalability as well as efficiency in organizations. And initially, it was the larger organizations that were able to benefit from these technology innovations because they had the teams and they had the capabilities to be able to absorb them. What is happening very quickly, especially in the last 5-10 years, is as technology is becoming more mature, the level of sophistication actually makes it much easier to adopt. So, for example, using a CRM tool many years back was a big challenge, but now you can just go online and you can sign up for. In the good old days, even to set up an email server, you required IT professionals. Now you just go online and you just set it up. So many things in technology, as you look at their evolution, they actually become easier and easier as time goes by. And we do believe that in the not-for-profit sector in India, the time has come where each NGO leader must look at saying, okay, if I truly want to scale my organization, I truly want to do with the best with the limited funds that I have available with me, then I must look at using technology better. The problem is that although it becomes easier to use, you definitely need some level of understanding. You'll need a certain level of comfort in being able to have this conversation. Without that, it is very easy to kind of be on the sidelines and sort of say, hey, I don't understand all this technology stuff, and I'm just going to be a bystander, seeing other people do all the action. And in reality, use of technology is not that complicated. It's just about understanding foundational stuff well and ensuring that we are able to be disciplined in the approach that we need to take. And at the foundation, at the Koita Foundation, we have been working with NGOs for the last 8 years. And having been a tech entrepreneur and having worked in the NGO sector, I must say that my success rate in technology initiatives is actually higher with not-for-profit organizations than they were many times with commercial organizations. Because when we're dealing with commercial organizations, you find they have a lot of money, they have a lot of capabilities, but they often don't have the drive which NGOs have. So what I found with NGOs is that it took them a while to get their arms around doing something. But when their teams got into it, then those initiatives were remarkably successful, right? So it was ironic, but we had a much higher, I would say personally, I've seen more success in the not-for-profit space in dealing with tech projects than I've done perhaps even in the corporate side. Having said that, it was not, I'm only talking about those leaders who were in the not-for-profit space who are excited about doing this, right? But the good news is that we have about 8 years of experience doing this with a reasonable degree of success. And the ILSS platform is outstanding because you guys have built such a strong platform for training NGO leaders that I find that the collaboration between our foundation and ILSS in putting together a really robust program on digital transformation, I think it couldn't have been a better timed initiative, and really excited about the program and what it can do. I'm also excited about the fact that we have recently at ILSS onboarded Anirban, who comes with a tremendous amount of expertise, having worked at very senior levels at Accenture and other organizations, to be able to provide leadership to this effort. And I'm also excited about the way the program has been constructed, which is a combination of both, hands-on classroom effort, as well as a lot of mentorship that has been built into the program. So I believe that the program is extremely well wired for long-term success. The other advantage of a program like this in digital transformation is that if you look at the not-for-profit sector, in reality, while there are, you could say there are many sectors you can go after, there are certain common sectors which where there are lots of not-for-profit organizations, right? So there are lots of not-for-profit organizations in education, in healthcare, in livelihood, perhaps in agriculture, in probably two, three other areas. What digital transformation does is it enables us to be able to share best practices across these organizations, right? So say, for example, we are working with Mother and Child NGO. There could be 20 mother and child NGOs across the country, all doing things in their own way. But as more and more of the NGOs start to look at digital transformation, then you can start to develop best practices in using digital transformation for improving the mother and child. And the same thing is true when you can look at education. And the same thing is true when, Shankar, for example, the kind of work that EkStep does, in a sense, it's building common tools that can be used by lots of different entities. And not everybody has to reinvent the wheel by, thinking about their own workflow and their own content and their own this. So using technology makes the initiatives truly scalable, not only within the organization, but that same capability can now be used across multiple organizations because of the fact that technology makes it easier to transport information from one place to the other. So I'm quite excited about the impact of the digital transformation initiative of ILSS, not only impacting individual NGOs, but also the ability of ILSS over a period of time to be able to say, hey, let me stitch together good practices in healthcare, in education, in livelihood, and let me make a library of that. So the next time somebody else is looking at healthcare as an area of focus, then they can build on existing successes rather than having to rebuild their own thing. So it makes it a lot more shareable across. And finally, and then I'll just kind of pass it back to you, the ability to be able to use these digital tools in your work allows you to start to capture more data. The moment you start to capture more data, you can start to get more metrics of impact and other matrices. Creates a great narrative even for NGOs to go back to their funders and their supporters to say, hey, by the way, here is how I'm measuring the work that I'm doing. Here is my value of impact. And here is how it's starting to trend by use of technology. And both wearing a funder hat as well as sort of looking at what's happening in the industry, each of our NGOs who have started to use technology have scaled not only because of the use of technology, because they make us much more compelling a case for investment from donors. So if I were wearing a donor hat and if there were two NGOs in education, one used technology effectively, the other one was kind of doing the old way, more likely that I'm going to support the NGO that is using technology, right? So it's a great tool to demonstrate to your funders as well. And that itself causes growth, right? Because you get more money, you can scale up your programs, you can do more locations, etc. So I'll just pause here. I can go on for another 10 minutes, but it's a topic that's of tremendous excitement to us, and we couldn't be more happy to partner with ILSS and take this forward. Yeah. So back to you, Archana. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Rizwan. Delighted to hear that. I'm actually going to build on what you shared because we've all heard so much about how it's not digital technology data as an end, but really it's a means to an end, right? And what is that ultimate goal that we're really looking at? And we've seen how across the sector and even broader in the country that it's not just helped improve the effectiveness of the organization, but it's also because it's done that, it's helped us reach more people, it's helped us reach more locations, and so on. I'd love to invite Rekha and Shankar at this point to say, would love to hear your views on what are the biggest hopes for digital transformation in India's social sector. Rekha, we'd love to start with you.
Hi, thanks, Archana. So I think the hope for digital transformation is there is actually a lot of hope, because I think the whole idea, the end game, if you can call it that, is really that we have an ecosystem where organizations are using technology as a means to achieve their goals or their program objectives, right? And the technology, I think with the passage of time, we are all seeing that technology has become much more accessible. So there is far more last mile access. There are much, and not all technology is expensive. There are enough affordable, tools available. And the whole idea is to, as I said, it's not tech first. It's program first, objectives first, and the users first, the beneficiaries first, right? The tech is just a tool to help you to achieve the end goal. I think the other hope in using digital transformation and digital tools really is to really transform organizations, right? So they are working differently, right? Where they have streamlines and standardized processes, their program outcomes are improved. They're able to tell their story better. And there is also a change in the organization culture, because you have data, you become more data driven in your entire approach. And you are actually, and we have seen that time and again, right? Where organizations think that there are certain things which are supposed to be happening on the field, right? You're supposed to visit people once a month. But then when the data comes in, you realize that, okay, there is a certain set of visits which are actually happening only 50% of the time, or certain things, so it helps you to really improve, and it changes the entire culture and mindset of the organization. So I think that's what I'm, hoping to see, that kind of a vibrant ecosystem. And I think
Definitely. And as I bring in Shankar, it reminds me that, even in our research, as we spoke to organization, there were no surprises that the highest percentage, right, close to 90% of the organization said that the area where technology would be important or very important would be program. Because then it's about being able to strengthen your internal processes. And Rekha, as you shared, then it's helping them becoming more effective with their teams, with their internal stakeholders, and then being able to take that to the larger ecosystem, whether that's to the funder or whether that's to the government. And so in some ways that becomes a channel to be able to just improve overall organizational effectiveness, therefore the strategy from there. Thank you for sharing that. Shankar, would love to hear your views.
Yeah, thank you, Archana. First of all, a huge congrats to ILSS for launching the report, much needed. Coming to your question, building off what Rekha said, my biggest hope is that digital transformation transforms the social sector. Over the last 15 years, I've been privileged to witness at close quarters how India has been transformed digitally. 1.4 billion people with Aadhaar, 500 million plus people using UPI, right? FASTag, the list goes on and on. And when other countries look at it, they're amazed that we managed to pull one Aadhaar off. And so when they see all of this, they clearly look up to India in how we can transform a country through digital. Now, imagine if our social sector can take it upon themselves that 10 years from now, the world looks up to India's social sector because we have transformed not just ourselves digitally, but through that, transformed the way the social sector delivers benefits. Right? This calls for a complete reimagination. And to me, anything short is not digital transformation, it is digital adoption. I can use Microsoft Office. That's not transformation, right? The real opportunity and what I'm excited about is reimagining how we can benefit people at a scale, at a magnitude much higher than we ever could, at a cost much lower, and at a speed much faster, right? All of this obviously requires a lot of rethinking, a lot of nervousness, anxiety. If it was not, it would not be called transformation, right? It would just be called, a delta change or something. But that is my biggest hope, right? That through digital transformation, can we transform the sector itself? Thank you.
Beautiful. And so not just the organization and also the sector, and really can we set a global benchmark for what we're doing in the sector? Um, in several conversations, actually, through the research, people also, you spoke about how India is so progressive in the use of technology. And at least in half a dozen conversations, it came up when you have relatives and friends visiting from abroad, how sometimes they are really amazed at how UPI is everywhere. You go to a religious institution and you want to buy something, or you go to the beach and you want to buy some popcorn. Everyone's like, just use the QR code, which is in a country as diverse and as huge as India, it's a tremendous thing, right? And then as we're looking at all areas and all economic classes, I think how do we really leverage that for the sector? I'm going to stay on this question on affordability and accessibility. In fact, because again, if I were to quote one example from our research, as we were talking to Hak Darshak and the team there, they were telling us about how, so for example, when they work with the first time smartphone users among their women members, they're not only training people on the eligible government schemes, which is their core work, but in many cases, they're training them on how to use a smartphone so that they're able to take that work and do it more effectively, right? What are your views on affordability and accessibility of these in the social sector in particular? And what have you seen evolve over a period of time? And what would you say are some opportunities or challenges for us going forward?
Yeah, so I would look at affordability not just from a cost perspective, but from a capability perspective. As an example, if to interact with a device, you have to type and type in English. A lot of people can't afford to do that. They don't have the capability. But if I can talk to my phone in my native language and the phone understands my intent, right? Suddenly it becomes affordable. Now, the easier part is as technology progresses, it is becoming more affordable, more accessible. India has among the cheapest data regimes in the world. We have among the most distributed smartphone infrastructure in the world, right? And we have already moved from desktops and laptops being the first device to to phones being the first device, right? And people are, given our average age, people are easier, they can handle phones much easier, of course, for limited purposes. But one area where the complexity is increasing, especially in the social sector, is the availability of different options. So I would like to frame the affordability from a social organization point of view as follows. From the available range of choices of technology solutions, which one do you choose? What is affordable now? What is affordable later? What is the total cost of ownership? Right? And those are the more difficult questions. From an end user point of view, affordability, devices, all that will come down, and increasingly so. Right? And but in designing digital transformation, one has to look at the total cost of delivering the solution, right? And that's where affordability might be a bottleneck for organizations, which is the cost they have to pay, the cost of retraining, the cost of going with a particular vendor, going with a particular set of devices and realizing that, oops, that didn't work out, right? That requires a bit of thinking through.
Shankar, I can't agree more. In fact, several people told us about how in the last 5 years there have been these pro bono slash low bono options that are offered by product organizations, which come for the first 1 or 2 years, right? And then obviously it's exciting and you sign up. And then what happens after 2 years, right? And I think that long term, being able to think what's the total cost and being able to plan is deeply profound. Thank you. Rekha, would love to hear your views.
No, I think I agree with what Shankar has said. One has to look at this thing from a longer term perspective, especially when you're looking at decisions of build, buy, open source, off the shelf, and one has to take the total cost, and one has to keep the lens that how do we make this whole thing sustainable? Because even from a funding perspective, right, you have to be able to finally build this as part of your program costs. It's only then that it can be sustainable. So what is a cost that I can build into my program? And then how is the overall cost of my program going down through use of these tools? It should go down. So one has to take that, big picture view and say, I think another thing I find that a lot of people don't look at always is that what is my cost per beneficiary with the technology and without the technology. In some cases, I've seen cases where people have realized that the choices they made have actually really increased their cost per beneficiary, and now they need to relook at it, right? In some cases, you've seen a reduction in. So that whole piece needs to be looked at more holistically from a big picture point of view before diving in.
Thanks, Rekha. In fact, Daniel Lobo, who again works with a variety of organizations in the sector from Tech for Dev, had also said this, right? How do we not ask donors to fund technology separately, but technology as a component of the project funding, right? And that in itself is a mindset shift. In fact, we heard so much about the role of really enabling this change and taking stakeholders along from the organizations that have leveraged technology to transform their work in the last decade or so, right? I'll share a few examples and would love to get your ideas and views on how do org leaders really rally the teams, right? Whether it's the end user, whether it's because it's ultimately a change management, right? Whether we're adopting technology or whether we're changing from one technology to another, it's a huge change management exercise. And how do we do that? We heard from several of our organizations like Koita Foundation, CK, Atma, about how involving the leadership team was paramount to them, even deciding how much they should invest in technology. And in some cases, they involved even the board members right from the start, right? Because then there's the board buy-in that this is the tech pivot that we are going to make as an organization. One thing that was super inspiring was to listen to Sneha, the team of Sneha really tell us about how much of the end user is there right from the beginning, right? And Shankar, you spoke a little bit of that, which is, so if we are getting them to type something, then do they have the capabilities to type? So are we able to think through the tech solution to see how is it going to be used? And how do we really bring them into the process right from the start? And so would love to now listen to your views, right, in terms of how do org leaders who are attending this space and who are thinking about digital transformation, how can org leaders really ensure that that time, energy, cost that they're investing in digital is really successful from the design to adoption and over long term? What are some levers to look at?
Should I go first?
Yes, Rekha, I would love to hear.
So I think firstly, I think Archana, you really kind of hit the nail on the head, because I think without, I'm at Koita Foundation, unless we have CEO involvement, we don't want to take up a project. It is the kind of most super critical success factor in this entire journey. And the reason is that, as Rizwan was mentioning, right, a lot of the digital transformation efforts in corporate or worldwide, if you see, right, 60-70% of the efforts fail. And they don't fail because there's a problem necessarily with the technology, right? They fail because either the design is not as per what it should have been, it's not user-centric, not user-friendly, and then the whole host of change management issues. So at our foundation, we have found that 30 to 40% of the effort that we have to put in is towards change management itself. And the role of the CEO is super critical, because CEO being involved ensures that whatever you're designing and the areas that you choose, first of all, the right priority areas, where do you want to use technology, where will you get the most kind of bang for the buck, if I can say that, So that's CEO has to be involved in choosing the right priority areas and in budgeting, planning, etc., but in also driving the change, because the entire organization needs to know that this is very important for the CEO and this is something that we need to do. And CEO needs to be involved right from that stage to looking at the design. When we design, systems, we develop like almost screen mock-ups, and we get the CEO to look at it and to see whether they are fine with it. What are the reports? What are the dashboards they would want to see? And how will they be using the system in terms of monitoring? Right. And without that, without the CEO's involvement at every stage, it's almost impossible to succeed. Even in terms of getting their people to use the system, a lot of the failure is because people don't want to adapt to change. They don't want to use the new processes. There is resistance to change. And it is only the CEO who can ensure that by using the carrot and the stick, right? So a CEO, a simple thing like the CEO viewing only reports from the system and calling up people when he or she sees something is wrong and saying that, okay, or conducting monthly reviews with the reports from the system. It's just a very powerful method, right? At CK, Uma used to use this system called show and tell. So she would tell, her people that you show me what the report says and tell me what you think about it, right? So it's very powerful.
Thank you, Rekha. And as I open it up to Shankar, it reminds me that, besides programmatic focus areas, the other area that these people who had really adopted technology to transform had used it was in internal impact evaluation. And I think, like what you shared, then that's kind of making technology the cornerstone and center of the organization's work. Shankar would love to hear you.
Yeah, I completely agree with Rekha that the CEO has to walk the talk. But to build off that, my personal experience has been, if the CEO can set a vision for something that is so much bigger and better than status quo, which excites the board, which excites rank and file, that is an inspiring destination to go. In reaching that destination, technology can play a massive booster role, or technology might be the only way to achieve that. So you're currently at this level, you're talking at this level. This gap can only be met because of technology. When you do that, it's like with your bare hands, you can lift 50 kilos. If you say, hey, I want to lift 500, you don't mind the booster. So for me, the cornerstone of transformation is I am willing to go through the pain, and pain it is. I'm willing to undergo the change in my day-to-day practices. I'm willing to learn a new skill, overcome my fear of doing something new, because the end excites me. So the excitement and the inspiration of wanting to reach that end is way higher than any nervousness or anxiety in the change in process, the change in learning a new skill. This, to me, is the biggest carrot. Process, ideas, are very important. And it's ultimately the small things that matter. Like Rekha's idea of, hey, I'm the CEO, I'm going to walk the talk. We will only have this review basis the dashboard. Send me the link to the dashboard. I will take a look at it. So these are also levers that CEOs have. But I think an underused lever is inspiring people and making them see how technology enables them to do what they could not. Then technology is a good slave. Otherwise, it's a very bad master. And the two are completely different forms of transformation. You're trying to transform according to a bad master, or you're trying to transform to take advantage of a good slave.
Beautifully put. In fact, rocket learning, as we spoke to them, and even across when we spoke to several people in the sector, were sharing about rocket learning being one of those organizations which, because the dream and the ambition was at a certain level of systems at a certain scale, then technology was a no-brainer. It wasn't like, you do this and then you adopt technology. Right from investment in technology to thinking about everyone needs to kind of use this to having leadership in technology. And so, yes, that's so beautifully put. I'm going to stay on this talent piece though, because it's a, it's the hardest one, right? We heard leaders who say, yeah, I mean, if I can afford a CTO, then much of this will be there. We also heard people say, actually, I don't want a CTO. I want to be able to bring it to that unit of what is necessary for people to use in technology. And I want all people to be able to do that. And then, of course, we've also had people, about 40% of people who said in the last 4 to 5 years, they've had to leverage a fractional CTO or a tech consultant. And so on this whole talent piece to be able to leverage technology in the social sector. What are your views on how can people think about it? What are some ways to be able to, like, who's the talent that we need to look for and how do we really leverage them?
If I can go first, again, I have my own views on it, which is not the thing. I think the talent to look for are people who want to solve problems. I want to do this. I need to use technology, and then using that, frame the right question, which is, I want to be able to work remotely. I want to make a data entry once and everyone uses it. When you're clear on your asks, then technology starts to become a good slave. Then after this, go online. You'll be surprised by the number of simple free answers you can get. Right? We are not expecting folks to become CTOs. Right? There will be 5% of your needs that are very complex. But for most cases, it's easy to reach out, seek help. But if you frame the question of, I need a good CTO, it is the equivalent in finance of, I wish I had a good finance advisor. What do you want to do? I want to open a bank account. Really? You want a finance advisor for that? A bad example, but something similar in technology. What I have seen is, if you're clear of the problem, if you're confident that you can frame it in a question, what's also good and happening in India is there is a growing network of organizations in the social sector that are ready and willing to help out. Organizations like Tech for Good, Donald Lobo, and there are many others, right? And part of this program that ILSS is going to roll out in digital transformation is to create a community around this. Right. So, yes, tech talent is difficult to get, but don't try to solve a problem that you cannot. Convert it into a problem that is solvable, right? Break it up into parts, and that CTO, you might need an hour of that CTO. any for-profit corporate guy, if you say, hey, I need an hour, I have a problem, you will find people who will help you over a weekend, right? It's how you frame the problem of talent. Can you avoid not knowing technology? It's like, can you avoid not dealing in finance? Whether we like it or not, our beneficiaries are becoming more and more tech savvy over the years, right? So we have to, and all around us are resources to do that. So it is a problem, but my advice is focus on a problem you can solve and not on a impossible problem.
Definitely. In fact, I just wanted to say that Sajid had this exact question, right? Which is that things like looking at CTO of technology, etc., may not, one is that it may not be affordable, but it may also not be relevant. And so, how do you experience this and address this? Rekha would love to hear your views.
No, I completely agree with what Shankar said. He really articulated it very well. I think organizations have to try to solve their problems. They have to, what is required from the organization more than the core technical talent is the ability to be able to understand what problem they need to solve and how they need to solve it, as in what is it that they need, right? What do they need from the technology, their ability to articulate their requirements. That part of it is very important. What kind of reports do I need? What kind of data do I need? They have to be able to understand that. So you need people who can actually do that. And in many of our projects, they are actually run and managed extremely well by program heads and program people. And a lot of the technical support is provided by the technology vendor, most of it. And in some cases, people just have a junior tech person who can do some, like admin, system admin, or other tasks for which you don't necessarily need a CTO. Honestly, to hire a CTO is a problem which, as Shankar says, a problem which you can't really solve. So you shouldn't try to solve it. And it's much better to have a tech consultant or a tech mentor or advisor who can guide you in terms of making sure that you're overall on the right track and you're not making any maybe wrong decisions, right? In terms of maybe some tech stack or some other things or area of focus, etc. But it's, I mean, to be able to get a good program team together who can manage the program and, establish that rapport with the tech vendor and get the work done is a very, very doable thing. And we have seen that across several organizations.
Lovely. Right talent, right mentor, in fact, the right communities as well. And I'll just touch on that because several people have told us that. Rekha, you want to say something?
No, there was one point which I wanted to bring up is that, while embarking on this journey, the other thing that instead of just jumping onto saying that I need a CTO or I need a so-and-so tech person, is also to look at other organizations who have adopted similar solutions and see what they have done, how they have done, and what kind of team they have built, right? I think there is a need for this kind of a more collaborative sharing and build. So and that's something which I'm hoping that we can do through this program, where we build a supportive community of organizations who can learn from one another and kind of grow together, right, and leverage.
Yeah.
So that's what I wanted to say.
Definitely. In fact, and I wanted to echo that because and Shankar also spoke about it, right? The number of people who told us that even to just be on that WhatsApp group CTO for NGOs and know that there are other people who are going through this. Similarly, Tech for Dev, Tech for Good, Edzola, a lot of the ecosystem organizations which are doing some really good work and more importantly, creating communities of people who can talk to one another real time on the challenges and potential solutions is being really, really considered valuable for the sector. Shankar.
Yeah, Archana, I can tell you one thing. The number of tech talent in Bangalore who have reached out to me saying, how can we help? Because we have reached a stage in our career where, we want to give something back. How do we engage in the social sector? I might have 1 hour a week, right? So the need to give back to society from the tech folks is rising, right? I think that's something which we as a sector should take advantage of and create various communities that they can join, create programs that they can join, create citywide groups. So it's a problem, but it's not the worst problem.
Can't agree more. In fact, the ACT grants, which is a lot, which has a lot of the Bangalore startup ecosystem, I know did this project where, in fact, one of our ILSS alum worked with them to be able to really map this set of people that you're talking about, Shankar, who raised their hands and said, we want to be able to leverage our expertise to solve social sector problems and opportunities. And then the social sector orgs kind of came up with what are the problems, and then there was a mapping done. Some really, really good results. And so, how do we map kind of the talent that's there to the problems around problem solving, right? And then bring in tech is super, super powerful. I wanted to just touch on one more thing, and there are lots of interesting questions, which is the role of the funders. And Rekha, I'd love to start with you and then listen to Shankar's views as well. So we already heard Rizwan talk a little bit about how, as the funder and an ecosystem builder, we have the opportunity not just to impact the organization, but also to see best practices across organizations, maybe in the same domain, as well as what we can do at a sectoral level. A question specifically for Rizwan and Rekha was, would you consider using philanthropic funds for funding organizations who would then use the funds to provide tech support to NGOs? Asking this since donors will not be able to see the direct impact. So instead of trying to build digital capacity in every NGO, funding an organization to do this for NGOs. Any views on that? And we'd love to hear Shankar's views.
So funding an organization who would like to provide tech support.
Yeah.
I think, one has to just take a little bit of a balanced view on that, because one would have to see what is the role of it's like a tech consulting company is kind of, I think what you're trying to say. Is that right, Archana? Yeah?
Yeah.
I think if I could, for example, if we could say partner with somebody who could do a tech consulting in a way which is kind of aligned to probably our way of thinking, that would certainly be a very helpful thing, right, for the sector on the whole. Because there is a need for that kind of mentorship and support and guidance to organizations. And in terms of funders, I think it is also slowly about funders also in a way changing their mindset. And I think it is changing to realize that the technology is it's not an overhead or, capacity building cost. I mean, it does build capacity, but it is essential now for programs. So in fact, I would say that they should also expect an outcome from the program, which, like what Shankar had said earlier, right, where you build a vision where you need to use technology. I think funders also can now reach the stage where they should demand that, expect that, and also therefore be willing to fund that, right? That is how the narrative will change.
Thank you for sharing. Shankar, do you want?
Yeah. Again, I'm trying to keep it as simple as possible. I think the simplest way is to ask funders to look at the force multiplication that technology can bring in terms of multiplying the impact per dollar or reducing the cost per beneficiary. If one looks at this metric, it aligns all stakeholders. The beneficiaries, obviously, the same dollar, more beneficiaries. The organization, because now it is looking at technology as a strategic lever, and it's factoring technology in how it delivers bigger, faster, better, cheaper. The cost for the numbers will reveal the truth, as Rekha said, right? It has to be a cost per beneficiary or a spend per dollar, whichever way.
I also think that there's a need to gear NGOs up to be able to articulate that, because sometimes even if they have achieved that, they are not tracking it, they are not presenting it to people, right? So they need
that's a great point.
Yeah.
And say that by doing this, we have achieved this. Therefore, it makes sense for you to fund the program this way.
Yeah. And the number of times I've looked at an NGO's performance and then said, boss, your numbers are so much better if you do it this way, right? So, which is why the digital transformation program of ILSS, in some ways, is hand in glove with the funding program. Because just like many people have a fear of technology, many people have fear of finance, right? So if finance, talk to my CFO. If technology, talk to my tech person. Unfortunately, to deliver value to the beneficiary, you cannot outsource this. You can outsource the execution, but not the strategic thought as to how the delivery leverages technology and other resources, including other physical assets, how people use it to deliver value. There's a cost to it. It can all be brought down to numbers. And numbers tell a story. So being able to tell their stories through numbers is again a complementary skill, whether you're talking about funds or technology.
Definitely. I'm actually going to take Lakshman's question, which is we're talking about building trust and how do we share the impact with others? His question is on the other side, right? So for the tech solution providers, how do we create trust and relatability in the solutions being offered by the various tech solution providers? Any views on that?
I did not understand the question.
So his question is, how do we create trust and reliability in the solutions being offered by various tech solution providers? So I'm interpreting this as, there are lots of solutions available there. How do we gauge / get a sense of trust relatability? And Lakshman, if that's not the question, then do just send us an update.
So I'm interpreting it as, how do I trust the solutions offered by various guys, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is not a confidential thing where and all, right? Try out 3, 4. This is the social sector. Anybody saying that, no, I will not tolerate that, you straight away have a red flag, right? Talk to people, talk to other organizations, ask around on the internet, explain what you're trying to do, right? And the solution provider will, if they are worth anything, they will explain to you why their solution fits into your thing, right? If they are not, if they're like a Salesforce kind of guys, there's enough material out there and there's enough community of people who are using them who will tell you, right? But lack of clarity on what you want, lack of clarity in how you will use it is inviting trouble. So then it's not a trust problem, it's a clarity problem. But if you have clarity, having honest conversations, saying, hey, I don't have money for a full year, right? If you give it to me for 3 months, I will go to my board and then get a thing. Worst case, the guy will say no, right? But this is a social sector. I have found people are relatively more generous with the social sector than they are with others. But and keep in mind, we are a very small, close-knit family in the social sector, right? If you screw up with one org, word will spread like wildfire, right? Which is another leverage, right? You shaft me, and I'll make sure that this word gets out to everybody. And within 2 weeks, the entire social sector knows about it. And who would want to do that? So we should give ourselves more power, right? When we are going out there and negotiating or asking or whatever.
Yes, definitely. In fact, it poses a question that can also be a suggestion from Neeraj, who says, how do we create something like a starter kit, given that there's so much of learning that, we can do across the sector, whether it's integrating Google Forms with sheets with contacts and so on. And so not just how people can solve with that, vendors can solve with that, but what have we learned about, let's say, if we've used a particular platform with Microsoft Word, what are some lessons in that and how do we share that? Is also a suggestion that he's given. So that's really helpful. I'm going to pick up a slightly different question, which is from Rana, who says, where do you see overall SPOs in India? Where are they in their readiness, maturity in the digital adoption process? I mean, without the intent for adoption, transformation is unrealistic.
You want me to take it?
Yes.
I've understood the question as saying he wants to know where are organizations in terms of their willingness to adopt.
Yeah.
Right. So I think firstly, if the CEO does not have the vision, right, then nobody is going to even embark on that journey, right? And the willingness has to be from both sides, right? One is the leadership has to be wanting to do it and willing to do it, and probably that's the only time they will take it up. But that willingness at the at the end user level, right, has to be something which has to be driven from the top. And I think that in organizations where who are taking this up, right, proactively, I am seeing that willingness. And I am seeing that the CEOs, if you guide them, they are driving it down. And the end users, while some of them struggle, they are finally, getting used to it. I mean, the key thing there is that you have to involve, you have to use a bottom-up approach also, right? Where the end beneficiary and the end user is involved in the process right from the beginning, right from design to asking them if this is what they want, do they need anything else, user-friendly, getting them to look at stuff and see whether it works for them, local language support, all those various other factors have to be taken into account. If you can build a system which is actually going to help them and you articulate to them that this is actually for you and it is for your benefit and this is how it's going to help you, be patient. And if you can implement all those things, people are willing to adopt. And I've seen so many cases where they come back and tell us, oh, we are so happy. We were feeling scared initially of this and we've never really used any application in our life except WhatsApp. And now we're feeling so empowered by doing this. So I think the end beneficiary is also looking at their own kind of skill development in a sense, right? Where they are upgrading themselves. And a lot of the women I've seen in communities, they feel very proud of the work and that the fact that they're using these applications, they're getting respect. So it's not about money, right? Only it's about also getting respect, getting a better status, feeling more in control of your kind of life in a way, right? Because data comes back to beneficiaries. You're putting hands back in the power of people, power back in the hands of people. It's all very empowering. And I'm seeing that actually increasing more and more. So I think we're in a great space and this is a great time to embark on this journey because there is awareness at both ends and throughout. It's just that one needs to put certain things in place to make sure that the entire chain, the chain works smoothly and there is no slippage on the way.
Thanks, Rekha. And in fact, as I open it out to Shankar, there are two nuances that's coming up on the same topic, right? One is what do we see as the experience of adoption of technology by users in the local government institutions or service delivery? So as we're talking about, on one hand, it's the social sector organizations, but also any views on if you're looking at when we're integrating with the government, what are we seeing there? Just wanted to throw in that lens as we hear from you, Shankar.
Yeah. For me, the focus has always been with technology and at any technology enabled solution, meet people where they are. What I mean by that is they have certain capabilities and they have certain daily routines, habits, and what they do, right? Once you understand that, design your technology enabled solution to be as close to that. It's a philosophy we at EkStep called +1 thinking. So when you're thinking of massive transformation, if you design it to be way higher or way different from the local institution or the last mile, you are guaranteeing failure. Instead, if you can design it as a series of plus ones, where a small change by the user gives them massive benefit, then what Rekha said is what happens. I have been empowered. I see the benefit. And now I'm willing to take the next step. So going back to local institutions, if you start with, do they have phone or not? If they have a mobile phone, can they access WhatsApp? Can they take a selfie? Can they use a QR code? Once you've kind of established that, rather than chase the best solution, designing it such that with what they can do and just one extra step, the plus one, you and they see a concrete benefit. So then they incorporate that extra step into their day-to-day routine. Now that has become the new normal. And then you can roll out the next evolution. Right. So 10 years ago, mobile first was a new idea. But now, if you don't do it mobile first, and if you don't do it as something close to a WhatsApp, close to a Facebook, close to an SMS, close to something to do with taking photos, right? And if you're asking people to type out stuff, right, then the local delivery will not sustain or will not scale up. Right. So to me, it's about the design.
Yeah. And within that, Shankar, you spoke a little bit about the local and what are really the user capabilities and what are the enablers. There's a question from Sweetie around using technology for improving women's and children's health from marginalized community. And if we look at the most marginalized among the marginalized communities, still lack internet availability, or sometimes there's a taboo around giving access to women and children, any access to technology, or they don't know how to use WhatsApp. How do we approach that equity issue, the challenge? Any views, Shankar and Rekha?
No easy answers. Let me straight away say that. But the principles are the same. Understand in their world, how do they access information? What is their degree of mobility? Do they manage to go around the house? Do they have a friend and influencer network? Do they have access to a phone call? Right? Once you know what they do, then you can start to design an intervention around. Now, we will not expect them to access a smartphone because they may not have. But if there is a Didi in the community whom they trust and who can be accessed through a phone call, the Didi could have the technology to be able to answer it. If not real time, get back to them. So there's no one size fits all, but the principles remain same. Understand your consumer, their daily habits, what they would like to do, what they want. What do they want? Right? Demand fundamentally is need backed by ability to pay for it. And I should be able to pay for it, not necessarily through cost, through effort, through staking my reputation, through giving you time and attention, right? And all of this are signals that they want something. And designing for sustainability involves trial and error. And digital transformation is not a one-shot success story. It is not an event. It is a continuous journey. When you think you've achieved a certain destination, turns out the technology has changed. Right? And whoa, so start all over again. So it's a constant journey. And there may not be any one fixed endpoint.
Definitely, can't agree more. In fact, it reminds me of what Reap Benefit, the organization, had shared with us, right? And of course, since their work is also around constantly prototyping for ecosystem problems and opportunities, they had shared with us about even how in tech you've got to just prototype, see, test it out, and sometimes it might be perfect today, but that doesn't mean it's going to be perfect 6 months later, right? And so that constant iteration and learning cycle is going to be important. I'm going to take one last question, which is like the big thing that everyone's talking about, which is AI. And so, how do you see AI play a role in for nonprofits in India?
Rekha, do you want to take the difficult question first?
Uh, I think, I mean, it is a difficult question because I think what I'm seeing with nonprofits, especially because they are resource crunched genuinely, right? They need somebody to do some of the work which they're finding it hard to find people to do. And that somebody now for them is AI, right? Can we just get this done through AI? Again, I think going back to the fundamentals, right, what we've been speaking throughout and what Shankar even said in his last, in the last answer, that we have to look at, the end user and the end beneficiary. What are they doing? Where are they? What are their real needs? And then see what are the solutions which are available to meet those needs, right? It can't be, oh, let's just use AI. I mean, what do I need on the ground? And is there an AI solution also, which is, and with AI solutions, the other thing you have to make sure is that is what we want to do, is it available in India in the languages that we need? Is it going to work, on the ground in the kind of communities that we have, etc. I mean, that whole, and are there vendors locally who can actually do that? I mean, that whole thing, there's a lot of reality check which needs to be done around it. You cannot just jump onto the bandwagon for the sake of it. And very frankly, a lot of the organizations are still at a stage where their basics need to be put into place, honestly, right? They need to get their basic data in place. They need to empower their field workers, their beneficiaries. They need to get good program reports, dashboards, look at that data, become data driven, do some proper analysis, do all that, right? I think you should first get the basics in place and not just jump onto things, and never use any tech, whether it's AI or any other technology. Technology is not the end in itself, right? It's the means to a certain place where we want to go, right? That's what I feel. Shankar.
Yeah. If you don't know how to cook, don't experiment with knives. First of all, you'll never put anything on the table. You'll likely cut yourself. AI is an extremely sharp knife. It's a very, very powerful knife for those who know how to use it, right? As Rekha said, get the basics, learn how to cook. Once you're sorted, you'll have a range of knives. AI is just the sharpest. But on a more serious level, each technology does something. And a disruptive technology fundamentally disrupts something, right? Internet fundamentally disrupted how we got information, how we created information, how we communicated with each other. Computers finally disrupted how we process information, right? AI fundamentally will disrupt how machines can understand us and how machines can reason with us and how therefore they can understand my intent, right? Going forward, a lot of powerful things will happen. It will not happen first in the social sector. And these are examples that are already happening, which is farmers talking to their phone to WhatsApp, saying, "Mera sarkari bhugtan kahan hai?" Right? And figuring out what he wants, talking to the Aadhaar database, talking to the Agri database, figuring out. This is happening. AI being used to translate documents. Supreme Court using it to translate judgments, right? AI for voice-enabled payments. So the core of all of this is a machine can listen to you, understand your intent, right? चाची को 200 रुपया भेज दो. कौन चाची? क्या 200 रुपया? Right? But having said that, it will figure it out. Right? That is the power of this. It will take us, now that the first generative AI hype is done and all of us have produced all kinds of poems through ChatGPT and got tired of it, the real work begins. Just like electricity was introduced, and it took 3 decades before it became widespread because it took that much of time to reconfigure our factories. And it took another 2 decades for a lot of applications to come on top, right? Here, we're not talking decades, but we definitely are talking years.
Wow, very powerfully said. Thank you so much for that simple and powerful analogy. For a lot of our people here, the question is okay, now where to from here? So I'm going to just spend a couple of minutes on where we go from here and then bring this to a close. As we bring the slides up, and Rizwan spoke a little bit about the team that's actually anchoring this. And so where we go from here is we are launching the ILSS Digital Transformation for Social Impact program, learning all that we've heard from the research on what are the challenges, what's the ecosystem we need, right, from mentors to the peer community, to be able to really handhold from ideation to through and through in the project. And so it's going to be a blended program, a combination of in-person, residential, and online sessions. The application details are there and the teams. For now, Shankar, Rekha, and of course, Rekha, let Rizwan know. Thank you so much for being with us this evening.